the long-awaited finale to The Legend of Zelda Retrospective. I have to say it's been a pretty long and, let's be honest, not always easy road for me, and it's taken me quite a long time to put this together, but I can't say that I haven't had fun with it. I will probably do another retrospective in the future, but not for a long time at least. This one kind of drained me. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at the final piece to the Zelda puzzle. We've already covered all the major console games, and while I am disappointed I couldn't do the handheld games, I assure you they will be mentioned in this video. So let's take a look at Zelda's legacy, its imitators, and its future. Zelda, of course, was not the first adventure game, but many agree that it was the first to do the genre quite a bit of justice. Though, in this day and age, it's kind of hard to see why. Zelda's plot wasn't really that much more complicated than things like Highlight or Super Mario Bros. Link was just chasing after a princess and trying to save her from what was supposed to be this world's ultimate evil. That kind of thing had been done dozens of times before in more mediums than games. Of course, when something is very popular, the trend is to try and imitate it, to capture what made that game special and use it in your own creation. Sometimes this works, sometimes it does not, and Zelda over the years has had dozens of imitators. Not so much the first game, but starting with the second one, it started to get kinda weird. Of course, the most infamous game to ever try emulating Zelda 2's playstyle was Rambo on the NES. This game came out in America before Zelda 2, but Zelda 2 was already released in Japan, so this does count as a carbon copy. The only difference here is there are no overworld scenes, it's just screen after screen of left and right gameplay and platforming, but again, even the weapons work pretty similarly, and you can pretty much tell that this was cloning the gameplay right down to how the weapons work and how he moves. Now, there were quite a few other games to emulate Zelda's playstyle, but Rambo is mostly infamous because it's basically nothing but a carbon copy of Zelda 2, meant to be a cheap cash-in on a film franchise that was relatively late to the game. But one thing that was surprising is that later on the Zelda franchise would actually be applied to different franchises other than Zelda and existing licenses, such as Star Fox Adventure, which, for better or for worse, attempted to be an exact replica of a Zelda playstyle, just with some air fights thrown in.
Will give you different information.
In fact, in my humble opinion, the game emulates Zelda a tad too well, if you ask me, and you can definitely tell after playing this that it was not originally meant to be a Star Fox title. But I'm not here to talk about that game. Yet. Now, the trend is usually to try and copy something recent, something that has been happening for only a little while, and games like Okami and Star Fox Adventures tried to emulate a very modern Zelda playstyle using Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker to go off of. But games like the incredibly recent 3D dot game Heroes actually takes a tip from the older Zelda games, and it works gloriously, showing that old can indeed make new more fun. This is actually where I start to have a lot of respect for Zelda imitators, because this is where the people who make these games start to get more creative. Games like Okami and 3D dot game Heroes are emulating Zelda's playstyle, that much is certain. In fact, the creators outwardly admitted that they were imitating Zelda, but the difference here is they put a twist on their games that made it look and feel very unique. It's obvious that it plays like Zelda, but it still feels very unique and very original. Now let's compare that to something like Rambo, which does absolutely nothing new with the type of playstyle that it's using, and instead relies almost entirely on a Sylvester Stallone license to try and make its sales go up. Now, of course, this goes to show that Zelda has an extreme presence within the gaming industry. Almost everybody there knows about it, and pretty much every studio has taken their shot at emulating it at one point or another. But what about the people that actually buy games? Now, like most things that are exceptionally awesome, the Zelda franchise has a very loud, very large, and very diverse fan base, ranging from incredibly smart and creative people who actually know what they're talking about, to the extremely insane and deranged people who just think up fan theories on the spot that have absolutely no bearing on actual fact. Zelda fans are extraordinarily outspoken about what they do and do not like about the series, and it's usually easy to tell which one is which just by looking at the particular type of fan art some people draw. Now, like I said before, Zelda fans can actually be extremely creative, especially when it comes to the different types of fan art that is produced by them. However, this also leads me into one of the most loathsome part of the entire fan base, and indeed any fan base, and that is the porn. Yes, like most things in the world, Zelda is no stranger to Rule 34, which clearly states that if it exists, there is porn of it. Now, I'm not actually going to show you any of this porn because, believe it or not, I actually have some standards. However, I would like to take this opportunity to make a plea to you out there. If you happen to be one of the people who makes this extremely creepy porn, stop it. Right now. I mean, for God's sake, the entire internet itself is already chock full of terabytes upon terabytes of real pornography, so I don't need to see Zelda getting raped by Ganondorf or getting made love to by Link. They are gaming icons, for God's sake. Anyway, my blatant nerd rage aside, I will also say that outside the fan base and more in canon, Zelda has been through quite a bit, and it can be found in several different iterations. Like I've been saying, it has a huge library of portable games that are just as good, if not sometimes better, than its console games, with the two most recent releases being Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Now, of course, any Zelda fan can tell you that not all of Zelda's format changes have been winners. I think anybody who has spent at least 5 minutes on the internet is familiar with the 3 Philips CDI games released in the mid-90s that, while they had Zelda and Link in them, were mostly, absolutely, completely horrible, and had very little to do with the original source material. What most people forget is the fact that Nintendo had absolutely nothing to do with them, and in fact had no say in their creation. They were actually spawned from a contract clause due to a fallen business deal that allowed Philips to take Nintendo characters and use them in their games without really paying any royalties to Nintendo or even asking their permission. So yeah, Nintendo kinda got